Hari Om. Let's start with the prayer. Om Samasta Jana Kalyani Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanura Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Tvameva Mata Cha Pitatvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakhatvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Namadeva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Gurudeva Deva. Hari Om. We are doing the Panchadashi, 10th chapter, called Nataka Deepa Prakaranam, where the whole world or the life itself is taken as the drama, and we are the actors in the drama along with the other actors, and set up and being illumined by the deepam, the light, so that one can see the audience can see the drama. So here the picture is I am the mind, and the mind is perceiving through the vrittis, and the vrittis involves two types. One is the external objects, related to external objects through the indriyas, by these pancha indriyas. That's how I am interacting with the world. And there are internal perceptions also, like anger, happiness, and sorrow, depression. All those things are internal perceptions where indriyas are not involved. Love, hatred, all these things are not related to indriyas, but these are internal perceptions that the mind, vrittis that our mind undergoes through. So whenever I see an object is seen through the senses. So if the object is something that I can see through the eyes, so eyes are a pramana or means of knowledge to recognize the presence or absence of the object. These are discussed before in the earlier chapters. He is only summarizing here. So through the eyes I can see the colors and also form. And I said, because I am given two eyes which are displaced by 7 degrees, I can see also a stereographic projection. That means a three-dimensional vision of the object. And if I don't have the two eyes, then I will see only a projection on a planar projection of the 3 dimensions. Eyes can only see colors and forms. For seeing colors particularly, form I can touch it and make some kind of a synthesis of the form, if I can see the whole and remember and make a memory diagram of that. Otherwise we end up with, as I said, 6 blind people defining elephant, each one only looking one part of it and say elephant is like a long and like a pillar, because he's only looking at the leg, whereas the other one looks at the tail and say it is one with the thin and long, and so on and so forth. All are trying to gather the vision of the elephant through other means, because the spurs of touch can give you also the form as well as the softness, hardness, etc. In the case of eyes are a means of knowledge for seeing. I cannot use ears for seeing or tongue for seeing. So eyes are specific for the colors and form, whereas the ears are specific for the sound. So each field of a pramana is means of knowledge, and here is the indriyas are forming a pramana or means of knowledge, and each pramana has its own field of operation. You cannot use the eyes to hear and ears to see. So their field is specific, and that's what being outlined, and that's how a pramana itself is defined in the Vedanta Paribhasha. Anadigata, abadita, artha vishayaka, jnanatvam pramanam. So anadigata means that which cannot be gained by any other means. So eyes, I am seeing it, Now how am I going to prove what I am seeing through the eyes? Is it real or not? Am I seeing correctly or not? There is no other means of pramana I can see, unless other fellow says it's not what you're seeing, is what is not there. Then I'd say, why am I seeing so? But from my point, eyes are the proof itself for seeing the colors. If I am color blind, then whatever I see through my eyes are the colors that I see, unless somebody else says this is a different color. Then I can see that it's a defective of the eyes and not of the object. But so the pramana operates depending upon the capability of the indriyas, and I may not be able to hear as I go, as the hearing capacity goes down, or the Lord is withdrawing the hearing capacity. Then I say, Lord is blessing me that I don't have to hear unnecessarily a lot of things. That's what is happening also. But therefore the capacity to hear, and I don't need any other means to support that other than by itself. Each pramana means knowledge, and pramana is means of knowledge, and a means of knowledge is required for any knowledge to take place. So you have the mind along with the senses operates, and when mind along with the senses goes out and grasps the object, a vritti is formed, a thought in the mind is formed, and the contents of the thought are nothing but the information that is gathered from the object. What kind of information? Eyes can only see colors and forms. Those are attributes of the object. They are not the object. They are attributes of the object. And ear can only hear the sounds that are produced by the object. And same way, every sense organ is only taking the attributive content of the object. The substantive of the object cannot be gained, because substantive is a matter. Chair is right there. I am only seeing the form and the colors of the chair through the eyes. Now these attributes belong to the chair, but what I see is not really as the chair is, but as measured by my eyes. And even the eyes are also they sees only not the exact attributes, but only reflected attributes. It's not the attributes belong to the object only. You cannot separate the attribute from the object. I cannot take out the form of the object from the chair. Form of the chair belongs to the chair. But when I say I am seeing the form of a chair, what I am seeing is only reflected attributes of the object. So everything is only based on the reflection. So attributive reflection attributes are brought to my mind, and it is the thought that forms, called a vritti vyapti. So every pramana brings some information by the five senses, bring the information to the mind, and mind synthesizes in the form of a vritti. So vritti is a thought, and objective sciences have no tools to analyze this. And even when they declare that there is no God and all that, they are making a statement based on the objective analysis, and they are using the wrong tools to analyze the problem and declare that there is no God or something, because the very God of proof they want is something they can see or hear or touch or taste. But God is not something to see. If something to see is a form, if a God has a form, then God gets limited by the form. Even though in Hinduism, gods are given a form, but also it says that it is only a symbolism through which I had to see what is the nature of God. It's not the form, but it's because of which every form exists. So even Lord Narayana, so in the Vishnu Sahasranama, we said the first word is Vishwam. Vishwam is Narayana. That means the whole universe is Vishwam. Universe itself is infinite, includes space, time, everything else. And that is why Krishna says, I pervade this entire universe in an unmanifested form. Manifestations are with the forms. So therefore, Mayatadam idam sarvam jagad avyakta murtina. I am pervading this entire universe in an unmanifested form. So therefore, I cannot really see Krishna, but if I see Krishna in a form that's only localized form for my convenience, for transactions only. But if I invoke the Krishna in a particular form as a Vigraham, and the Vigraham is not really Krishna, but I am invoking in the form of Krishna for my meditation or for my upasana. But anyway, here we are talking about the five senses can only gather the attributes of the object and not the substantive. Then what is a substance? So we say this is a iron, this is a chair, this is a chair, wooden chair. So how do we know it's a wooden chair? I am also gathering the attributes of not only the form of a chair, but the attributes of the wood also. If it is an iron chair, I am getting the attributes of the iron. If I touch it, I can make out some of the attributes through sense of touch. And if it is a gold chair, I can see the golden color, but all that glisters need not be gold, but appears to be maybe a gold-plated chair, may not be gold chair, but gold-plated chair. But what I am seeing is superficial attributes of the object only, not the substantive. And whether there is a real substance or not, I have to analyze using a spectrochemical analysis. Is it really gold or not? It appears to be gold. And you know the Eureka story, where one has to do something else in order to know whether the crown is made up of gold or some other material. And the density and all that, how Archimedes comes up with the statement that it is gold and not some other or gold-plated one. So in all these things, the knowledge takes place through a pramana. And we'll read the sloka 18 here. Idamo ye viseshaha syuhu gandharupa rasadayaha. Idamo ye viseshaha syuhu gandharupa rasadayaha. Asam karyena tan bhinjad. Asam karyena tan bhinjad. Ghanadindriya panchakam. Jnanadindriya panchakam. So idamo, this type of objects there, which are viseshas, these are objects in the form of gandha, rupa, rasa. So sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha. Shabda, sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha. That's why we said the order is, because we say akasha, vayu, agni, apa, prithvi, each one is picking up, say shabda, sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha. So the lower ones have all other previous attributes plus additional one. So Prithvi has all the other, so the Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, and in addition to that, Gandha also. Whereas the Akasha is only Shabda, because I can figure it out, the spatial coordinates, by hearing the sound. Hey, something that is coming in the other room. I'm not seeing it, I'm hearing it, but based on the sound, whether I have a stereographic. Remember, different directions are coming, and that's because of spatial directions. So that is a property of this space. So asam karyena, that the indriya panchakam. So asam karyena, for the individual, each one binjat perceived by individually, one by one, that is eyes can only see and ears can only hear. So each field is specific for its operation, and I cannot use the other indriya for this. And this is all being discussed here in this sloka. So essentially, each pramana is valid only in that. This is very important, because when we try to use science, objective science, to analyze the subject, it's not a valid pramana, because the objective tools are not capable of analyzing the subject I am, are not capable of even analyzing the subtle material, because these objective tools are gross materials and they cannot analyze the subtle material. So therefore, I am using the gross materials and then declare that there is no subtle things and all that. That's only stupidity only, because you are using the wrong tools to to look at the problem, and this has to be understood here. So this pramana means the science can only analyze the objective analysis and say whether the object galaxies are there, stars are there, all other things, including the electrons, protons, neutrons, and including so-called God particle also. Because God particle also is another particle detected by breaking the atoms into smaller and smaller and saying that that is the fundamental particle. Therefore, they call it a God particle. There is no God, but if a God is a particle, then we have real problem. So anyway, so this science cannot be used for Vedanta, and Vedanta cannot be used to analyze the objective also. So don't use the Vedanta to say that this is not really true, because it's very important for how the knowledge takes place also, because there is a lot of confusion. According to the Mimamsa and all that, mind is going out along with the Indriyas and grasping it. That's not necessarily true according to science, because when I see an object, my mind is not going there to grasp an object. Actually, information is coming to through my eyes and forming an image in my retina, and that is transmitted to the optical system, and that is translated by a program code that Lord has provided. The electrical input is converted into a software that's called thought. So Lord has already made a program code which you cannot break it, and that program code is required in order to convert the objective, which is essentially plus minus charges, neurons, into a subtle, which is essentially thought. I cannot use this is a science says. So this is a valid because we are talking about measuring up to the neurons. That is tools that we can use. So this is where the science can go. Beyond that, science cannot go because objective tools are not amenable. So don't say Vedanta is right than science. Vedanta is right in its field. Science is right in its field. So you had to use the objective tools where the objective tools need to be used, and also where Vedanta has to be used, where Vedanta alone can be a pramana, means of knowledge. So the pramana definition is anadigata, abadita, arthavisheka, jnanatvam pramanam. So anadigata means it cannot be applied where it doesn't. Eyes cannot be applied in hearing, and ears cannot be used in seeing. Same way, the objective science cannot be used for Vedanta, which is beyond the objects, and Vedanta should not be used in the objective analysis. And all that should be crystal clear in this without any confusion. So therefore, scientific analysis is required where science can analyze, where we quote unquote science means only objective sciences. Vedanta is real science also, and that is essentially Shastram, is science that includes higher knowledge which cannot be gained by objective analysis, because anadigata, which cannot be gained by any other means. Now we'll read Sloka 9. Kartaram chakriyam tadvat, kartaram chakriyam tadvat, vyavruddhi vishayanapi, spurayedekayatnena, yosau sakshatra chidvapuhu. Together, kartaram chakriyam tadvat, vyavrutti vishayanapi, spurayedekayatnena, yosau sakshatra chidvapuhu. So kartaram is who is the one who is a doer, that is ahankarta. So that is Jiva, because I have a notion that I am a doer, I am a knower, I am a performer, etc. That is called ahankara. Jiva and kriyant, that objective thoughts, tadvat vyavrutti vishayan. So the respective objects perceived by the senses, vyavrutti, tadvat as vishayan, the objects of corresponding objects. So the objects of sound, objects of forms, and objects of taste, object of the smell. So each one has a specific object, and tadvat vyavrutti vishayan, so respective objects for each sense organ, senses, api chidvapuhu, consciousness, parayet, illumines, asau, that consciousness, atra, in this Vedanta, is called sakshi. Sakshi atra chidvapuhu. It's called sakshi atra, sakshatra chidvapuhu. And now he is defining who is the real knower. And this we have to be clear here. Who is the real knower? Who is the real seer? Who is the real doer? This is a $1 million question here. But you have to understand this from the point. So when I say I am a doer and I am a knower, because when I say that I see an object, and object is the senses and the mind is forming a vritti. Vritti means a thought. Thought in the mind or perturbation of the mind is called vritti, or modification of the mind is called vritti. And vritti is still an inert entity. But inert entity, knowledge cannot take place just by inert. A consciousness has to enter into picture. So whenever the vritti, object thought, this is a pot, this is a chair, when it comes, consciousness has to join or illumine that. The illumination of the consciousness is called palavyapti. So vritti vyapti is the formation of the thought of the vritti, and the contents of the vritti is nothing but the attributes of the object that I am seeing. So when I am seeing a chair, a form of the chair is forming, and that contents of the vritti is nothing but the form and the colors of the chair is in my thought content, and that is still inert. So existence of the object out there has become an existence of the vritti in the mind. Consciousness that I am has to illumine that vritti, because that is still inert, vritti is still inert. Illumine the vritti for me to be conscious of the vritti, or conscious of the contents of the vritti, or conscious of the attributive content of the vritti, or the conscious of the object, because objective knowledge is the attributive knowledge is the objective knowledge. So therefore, what is involved is whenever the vritti is formed, illumination has to occur by the consciousness. And where is the consciousness? Consciousness is pure consciousness alone, is a pure consciousness which is all pervading. And we say consciousness coming from back as though, quote unquote, and getting reflected by the mind or illumining the thought, and the reflection of that is the knowledge of the thought. So who is the seer? I am a seer. When I say I am a conscious entity, only can see. So I am knower or a seer means I am as a conscious entity, conscious of the contents of the vritti, which is same as contents of the object, form of the object through the eyes. So who is a seer? From the point of the real seer, it is pure consciousness, because that's where the consciousness is. So we say that consciousness, which is sakshi, which is all pervading, is a real seer. But if you go to consciousness from its point, it's not a seer. Why? Because it's anantatvam, it is infinite. So figuratively we call it, it is a sakshi, but sakshi cannot see, by itself cannot see. It is reflected in the mind, and that's called chidabhasa. Reflection of consciousness by the mind or the vritti is called chidabhasa. So it is a reflected consciousness only is the knowledge. So who is a seer? In principle, when I say I am a seer, it is only a notion in the chidabhasa with the mind, saying that I am a knower, I am a seer, I am a doer. A thought arises there, that's called aham vritti arises, but the real seer is actually pure consciousness. Pure consciousness cannot be real seer also, because from that point there is nothing to see. So here one has to be say, Figuratively, for Vyavahara, for transactional purposes, we say that Sakshi is the seer. Until we go to Sakshi, and there, from that point, there is nothing to see, because I am Ekaveva Advitiyam. So this is whole has to be understood only for transactional purposes. At the Vyavahara stage, we say Sakshi is the seer at one point. Other point, we say the Chidabhasa is the seer. Seer keeps shifting depending upon my reference state. For the Ajnani, says I am a seer. He saw this one. When we say, so who is a seer? Says it is actually a Chidabhasa reflected by the mind. So activated mind is the seer for him. But if you question how can the mind see, and mind cannot see by itself unless there is an activation. That means Chidabhasa has to be there. Chidabhasa cannot be there unless there is a pure consciousness, because we are talking about reflection. So we have three things. One is the original consciousness, which is all pervading, the mind, which is inert, and the reflected consciousness. The mind, we call it reflecting medium, and reflected consciousness. So without the mind, there cannot be reflection. Without the original consciousness, there cannot be reflection. And the mind, as long as the mind is there and the original consciousness there, reflection will occur, because that's the nature of the mind itself, subtle body. Therefore, the original consciousness, reflected consciousness, and the reflecting medium. From the point of an ignorant person, it is the medium is what is I am a knower. So identifying with the mind, I say I am a knower, I am a doer, I am a seer, I am a hearer, I am a taster, etc. So that is at the level of ignorant person. A sadhaka, a seeker, tries to learn from Vedanta and says, for him, he says, it is from the Chidabhasa, a reflected consciousness along with the reflected medium is the knower. And if you further go, how can there be reflected consciousness? Because the mind itself is the inert. Then you say it's original consciousness. So it's like when we have in the full moon night, we are walking and suddenly we saw an object there. So in the full moon night, in the moonlight, I am seeing the object. Because moon is so bright, I can see it. So what I am seeing an object. How am I seeing? Because I can see the light falling on the object, moonlight falling on the object, getting reflected and forms an image in my mind. That's how I am seeing an object. But essentially I am seeing the reflected light from the object. What light reflected? I say it's a moonlight. I am seeing in the moonlight. But moon doesn't have a light. Moon is by itself is not a luminous entity. So it became a luminous entity because of the sunlight. So what I am really seeing, it's a sunlight really illumining the object, even on the Purnima night where there is no sun. I don't see a sun, but again still it is a sunlight that I am really seeing. This is what Sakshi means. Sakshi is from the sunlight, he is not even there to illumine. At the same time, we say that Sakshi is illumining via the mind, and via the mind I am falling on the illumination, on the thought. Because Sakshi is everywhere, therefore it is that part of Sakshi that is falling on the local mind, we call it a Sakshi. That part of the total consciousness that is falling on the local mind, we call it a Sakshi. So that whole process is depending upon who is a knower, the answer depends upon who is asking the question. So for Ajnani, it is the mind is a knower. For a seeker, it's a mind reflected by the Chidabhasa is a knower. For a Jnani, it is a Sakshi. Even for a seeker, one has to shift attention to I am the pure Sakshi that is illumining the all. But from Sakshi point, there is no illumination of any kind also. So I can illumine, but I don't illumine also. Both are valid statements from the Sakshi. So here, Atra Sakshi is what is called? It's called Sakshi because it illumines the objects via pure consciousness. So we go into more details in the next sloka on. We'll do that in the next class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.